Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Chris, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Michael. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's I think who's counting, but I think it's your third time. Such an interesting business and a fast moving business. I think last time we spoke, you were just on the cusp of, or maybe you had just secured your first location in New Brunswick, so that was pretty exciting for the business. So I'm really looking forward to catching up, see what's going on with your business and the industry, and let's start with for those who may have missed our conversations. Who are you, and what do you do for a living? Tell us and the listeners a bit about yourself.
Thanks for the introduction, Michael. It has been quite a while since we first spoke, and the business has grown a lot since that last time we spoke, right when I first entered New Brunswick. But I'm the founder, CEO of Cannabis Xpress. We're a chain of 19 operational locations. 14 of them are in Ontario, 5 are in New Brunswick, and we have 2 more stores opening up in New Brunswick this summer. So we'll be at 21 stores total by the end of the summer. We're the largest private retailer in New Brunswick. We opened up the first private retail store, and out of the 12 licenses in New Brunswick right now, we'll have 7 of them once we open up the next 2 stores. So we're very big out there. And then in Ontario, our stores have been around for a while. I'm actually getting close to some of my 5-year lease renewals, which is shocking to see. But most of our stores are in small to medium-sized towns. I live in Toronto, but the strategy was to focus on building a cost-efficient model that's scalable, looking at underserved, underlooked communities where they need a retail store. And I avoided, for the most part, big cities, just because at the beginning of legalization, everyone flooded into the big cities to open up stores, and it just didn't really make sense for us, especially considering how much cash we had to start the business. And then prior to this business, I actually had 4 other retail stores, cannabis ones, that I sold. And then previous to that, so I've been in the cannabis industry in different parts of it for quite a long time. But I worked on M&A transactions, about 15 transactions of acquisitions, investments, when I was working for a public company. Most of the work was in the U.S., in California, and I was based out of Toronto doing that. And then, I guess, education-wise, undergrad from Ted Rogers School of Management in Toronto, and then my MBA from DeGroote School of Business, McMaster University. And then on the side, I do some teaching as well at George Brown College, so business and cannabis class.
Oh, fantastic. Now, you were very early on into I remember talking to you about your business model, that you were very early on figuring out that the real estate costs could really submarine a lot of the cannabis industry businesses if they weren't careful. That was very early on in your strategy, right? Find, as you say, underserved, small communities, don't overpay for the real estate, no need to have big, Bellagio fountains out front or anything like that, but just give good service and good product to the consumer. That seems to have worked for you for sure, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people, they spend, I know actually a few people that spend over $1 million on opening up a store in Toronto, and all those stores they're gone now. They don't exist anymore. Yeah. And then when you put that much money into building out a store, you don't get any of it back. So it's a big loss for a lot of people. And I do think now that we are coming close to the 5-year lease, so most commercial leases are 5-10-year leases. So a lot of them are coming up for people all across Canada, particularly in Ontario. So I do think there's going to be a lot more stores that decide not to renew their leases in the next year or so.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's a good segue into the next question. Let's start with the big picture. How would you describe the current state of cannabis retail in Canada, and how's it evolved over the past 18, 24 months? It's funny when you say it's been 5 years, 5+ years since legalization, and it's not talked about in the way it was when it first hit the market. So give us a bit of a 411 on what's happening in the cannabis industry, and how are sales, and just what's going on.
So at the beginning, obviously there was a lot of licensed producers, public companies. They had gigantic facilities, and then a lot of them are closed down now just because they built huge facilities. So the production side, the amount of licensees, facilities is significantly different than what it was at the beginning. And then in terms of retail, there was, a frenzy of new store openings. Now, in Canada generally, I believe we're in a market correction phase. Like Ontario has peaked at about 1,700 stores in 2023, and then now there's more store closures. There's a lot of mergers, acquisitions with retail. So there
was a lot of talk in Ontario, for example, about the market was probably 12 to 1,400 stores and something like that, or was there any sense that it would be that 1,700? I know the city of Mississauga, for example, came online last year, and that of course added a lot more stores in a market that wasn't served. What do you think from your background is the right number for a province the size of Ontario? Do you think that's about right, or you think it'll settle out around the 1,400 range?
I think probably around 1,500 will be the right number, but still in Ontario, so municipalities had the option to opt in or opt out of having retail stores. So there is still a significant amount of, pretty decent sized cities and small towns that don't have any cannabis stores. Like, for example, Oakville doesn't have any cannabis stores. Richmond Hill, so just north of Toronto, doesn't have any cannabis stores. So I do think that the issue is that a lot of people open up stores beside each other. So I think if the total number of stores was around 1,500 and it was spread out equally, then just for the listeners, I mean, if the listeners are wondering why on earth people would do that, it's because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically you had no idea that there was another cannabis store opening up next door, right? With the way the legislation worked and the approvals worked, you didn't really know what was happening in your neighborhood as a cannabis retailer. Have I got that about right? Yeah, at the very beginning, you're right about that. At the very beginning, there was an influx of people submitting applications, and you only really found out once the location was at further stage of licensing during the public notice period, where you post a placard on the door, you get feedback from the public, and then you respond back. So at that point, then you could see on a map where everyone was, but that sometimes at the beginning took a couple months before you even got to that stage. So
no one knew where anyone.
Yeah, it's too late. It's too late. So
hey, I got a quick question for you. Since you're from that part of town, so to speak, Stony Creek on the way to Niagara from Toronto, and sorry for the folks on the West Coast or wherever. But it's an interesting question. There was a place where my daughter used to play soccer called was a Players Paradise, huge indoor soccer field, beautiful pitch. And then at one point, I think it got sold to be converted to an indoor cannabis farm. and I remember using that in presentations literally around the world to show people that was happening in Canada. Now, when I drive by, it looks like it's a soccer place. So I guess that deal fell through. I'm just kind of building on that point of, at one point there was just too much supply, but it's just, Players Paradise, that deal fell through, right? That's still a soccer pitch, right? They're not playing in a bunch of cannabis growing fields, right?
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, a lot of those deals ended up falling through, and then facilities just they got resold, repurposed, and then changed. So I'm glad she, I don't know if she still plays soccer, but more people can play soccer there now.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, let me pick up on that a little bit. So in the early days, it's funny how things teeter-tottered a little bit. It was like, oh, there's not going to be enough supply, and then there's a massive oversupply. Where are we in terms of the LPs, the licensed producers? And are you happy as a retailer with the state of the product that's available to you? Is it enough product? Is it fresh? Talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, the products are getting better from the beginning. I think the quality has gone up significantly. The price per gram has gone down, which is, due to having so much product available in the market. So the price has gone down for retailers, so our margins can, be a tiny bit higher from that. But there's still issues with, the amount of people that buy products illegally. Like it's still 30 to 40%, across the country that are buying products illegally. And, the main thing to fix that is it's not really in terms of what a retailer can do in terms of, having more stores. Obviously that helps more stores, then, more people will come to us, but there needs to be changes in terms of the regulations for example, like edibles, having more milligrams in each package would, that alone would convert a lot of people from buying products illegally over to legal products. So there's still a long way to go in terms of, getting that number of illicit sales down.
It's interesting, though, if I flip that math, and I've said this before, if you took any industry and said you're going to launch a brand new industry in a country, in a province, in a city, and I'm going to take 60 to 70% of market share within a couple of years, you'd probably not, and back to your M&A days, you probably wouldn't accept that deal. You'd like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But, I think it's been quite a success if you just kind of flip the math and say we went from zero sales that were contributing to building roads and building hospitals and employing people to now what, 50, 60, 70%. It's, I think the industry needs to kind of, stop and congratulate itself. And, I think it's a good milestone, no?
Oh, I completely agree with you. I'm always very positive on the industry, and I think the government is doing a lot. It's significant contributor to our GDP, lots of jobs.
Yeah.
It is tough to get it down to 0%, but I do think every year it goes down, right? So we are trending in the right direction of getting the amount of illegal sales down to a lower percentage. I don't think it's ever going to be at zero, but if we can get it under 10%, I think that would be ideal. But we're still a couple of years out.
Do you think? Let me ask you this question: do you think the price pressure on the decreasing cost per gram is from supply, or is it from the? I mean, one of the ways the illicit market competes is they lower their price because they have far less things to, their cost of goods sold is far less than yours or the LPs. Which of those do you think they're both drivers of driving the price down, or do you think it's a oversupply? Just what's your instinct on that?
Yeah, an oversupply definitely has driven the price down, but it's slowly peaked back up just because a lot of the good products are now being shipped out internationally. So I think a lot of the licensed producers realize they can, pay less in taxes by shipping products internationally. So I think a lot of focus from some LPs. I know there's some that have EU GMP facilities that are shipping more products internationally. So good product now is the price for good product is going up now just because of, there's a lot of demand here for it, but they make more money shipping it internationally.
Okay. Now, Cannabis Xpress, we talked about your business model earlier on that, you'd find great real estate in underserved markets, but that's not all it takes to win. If it was that easy, anybody could do it. Talk about what and how you win. You've carved out a nice space. What's your value proposition to customers that keeps you expanding now heading to 21? Clearly the province of New Brunswick like your business and you're doing well there. If you had to say the customers come to my store because of this reason, some of that is location, like for everybody, but talk about your value prop.
Yeah, the location is the most important. Like if you have a better location than someone, that the location's always going to win when it comes to having any type of store. But it's obviously not just that. Like our stores are, they're clean. We have small footprint of how big the actual store is. So it's easy to walk in and talk to someone immediately. We have a limited SKU count. So some stores have over 1,000 products available. Wow. And that's just too many. Like I think, for a staff member to be trained on over 1,000 products is pretty much impossible. So having a lower SKU count allows our staff to be a lot more trained on, the different types of products and, benefits of each one. So their knowledge is a lot higher, which, a lot of our customers appreciate. And the efficiency of our business, it's, called Cannabis Xpress for a reason. So you can be in and out in under 5 minutes, and, our products are competitively priced. So we typically are lower priced than most people around us, and we, frequently have sales. So the main value proposition for our customers is just being able to, get in and out really quick. We have, really good parking at all of our locations, so it's easy for people just to, jump out of their car or to walk in. The staff are trained really well on the products, and, customers come in, they can get education if they want it, or they can just grab a product and leave. So just being able to, easy shopping, affordable, and, not intimidating is those are the main value propositions for people coming into our stores.
Let me ask you about your people for a bit. You talked about training and how are you finding it? Are you able to find the right people in this market? And talk a little bit about how you train them. It's a great strategy. You have fewer products, more training. Talk about how that works and your recruitment and retention. How's that going for you?
Yeah, retail retention has been, I think, tough for a lot of people, not just cannabis retailers, but retail retention is always challenging, and I think COVID has made that more challenging, like post-COVID. So for some of the towns, like the biggest challenge for us in terms of of that is if we have a store that's very remote, the pool of candidates that apply to the job is usually a lot lower. So sometimes it's challenging opening up a new store in a very remote place where, it's only 3,000 people that live in the town. So the number of applicants we have is lower. But on the flip side, when we do get a strong team in that store, those people are likely not moving out of that town anytime soon. So the retention is a lot stronger once we actually have a good team set up. And then in terms of us training our staff, we actually just introduced a new position internally and brought someone on to do it, where they are going to be they go from store to store and they just help staff with how to sell more product, teaching them on sales. But typically most people come in to our business with they already have some sort of sales background or they sold something before. And then since we have such a small amount of products available, well, not small, but
relatively
people, we're able to have we have all the information on all the products. So during the onboarding process, we can train staff on all the products. And then if we need, new information, we can talk to some of the brands, that we buy from and get updated product knowledge from them. So it's a combination of things for our training process.
Well, you know what? I've talked to many merchants at the very, very senior level for large organizations, and I often say a version of, edit to amplify. It's often the case in many models. The fewer products you're just articulating the benefit, right? Is the people get to know them better. They have it's a bit of an 80-20 rule. Do you roll in new products though? Do you have new product launches? Do you make a big deal out of that? Does that help grow your business too? Just last question on product.
Yeah, pretty frequently. I'd say about in Ontario, New Brunswick, the products that are available is different than Ontario, but for the most part, each store probably has 80 to 90% of the same products available. And then in certain stores, customers ask us for something specific that other stores don't have, like a special topical or something like that. Then we'll get that product in for them. But for the most part, most stores have the same products, and then constantly brands are coming out with new products as well. So we do bring in new products frequently, but it's typically from a lot of the same brands that we already carry.
And okay, I said last question on product, but I got another question, which is, what's the percentage breakdown between like dry flower and edibles and all the other products? Is it 80-20 or 50-50? How does that shake out for you and the industry, actually?
Yeah, so flower is still pretty steady, but pre-rolls are now about 30% of total category sales. So pre-rolls have been going up. There are some other categories that have been increasing a lot over the last year, like infused pre-rolls. That's probably one of the largest in terms of percentage growing categories. But yeah, flower is still strong. Flower still hovers around 30-35%, and the pre-rolls are growing too.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about in the time since you've launched. Actually, in the time since we've spoken, I was just in Manhattan, and I wandered into a couple of the new, I guess they're not so new, but pretty new legal community-based retail cannabis stores. And I was thinking about, what you and I could talk about. And, California's had ups and downs. New York is once thought could be the biggest market in the world, but it's coming out slowly. What's your observation? You did some work, as you said, in the States. What's your observation about the U.S. market, particularly California and the U.S.? And are there any lessons for retailers here in Canada?
Well, California is such a tough market. I know a lot of if you look at all the big multi-state operators, the public ones, most of them aren't in California just because of how difficult it is to be successful over there. The biggest, the brands that stick out that are doing, and they have retail stores that are doing well, Cookies, Stizzy's doing incredibly well with the business that they have built.
What makes California so difficult? Is it the municipality approvals? Is it the harvesting? What makes it such a challenging market?
The regulations. I think the regulations are the biggest factor, right? Like people can still sell products at a much low, what happens, where you make 100 pounds, you sell 20 of them in California, and then the other 80 pounds gets sent over to New York or somewhere else where they can get 10x on the price. So the regulations are still what's stifling, business the most. in not just California, but other states as well. So the regulatory stuff, the taxes, 280E, just not being able to, make deductions on, expenses, things like that has been the most difficult. But there is more positive change coming. Like, just this week, the Senate in the U.S. recently approved Trump's DEA pick, who, appears to be pro-cannabis and will likely push, rescheduling from.
We've heard that before, though.
Schedule 1. So yeah, we've definitely heard that before. But I think that's gonna make a lot of change.
Okay, here's an esoteric question for you about the U.S. Like the best they were going to offer was moving from Schedule 1, which, if the listeners don't know, is kind of puts cannabis in this at the federal level in the same categories like heroin, to a Schedule 2, which makes it less. But they're not talking about legalizing. I worry that when you move it down to Schedule 2, all the legislators kind of go, okay, we're done, and we'll see you back in 20 years. And you really haven't accomplished a whole lot. You've got maybe better banking options as a retailer. Where do you think that market's going?
Yeah, it's still not the best, right? But I think if it gets to Schedule 1, that the banking's going to be easier.
Schedule 2, you mean, right?
A lot of these public companies will be more profitable, right? Just because they with 280, like they aren't able to deduct a lot further from their taxes. So I think the profitability of a lot of companies is going to go up significantly. So that will lead to a big change, like it'll make prices better for consumers. And then even in the US, like over the last few years, like more and more states are introducing, rec legalize, they're going recreational or at least medical. So it's still going to take a few years, but that is the biggest thing. And it's the same thing here with the taxes, right? The taxes are the biggest thing that we're dealing with in terms of expansion.
Let's talk about New York for a second. What did you think of that interesting business model where initially the licenses were given, you had to be somehow community engaged, right? It was almost like a co-op, but the community had to be involved. There's rev share. What do you think of that model? Do you think there's some viability for that in the Canadian market?
I don't think that'll ever happen over here. And I think it's just because each province already has their own, regulations in terms of, how we operate businesses and the licenses. So I don't think that model will ever come over here. I think in theory, there's like the theory of it, and then how it actually rolls out is, obviously completely different. The theory of it, if you had a criminal record, you would be fast tracked to, getting a license to give back to, communities that were hard hit from the war on drugs. Like that, I see. That I completely agree with, and it makes a lot of sense. But then it does make it difficult for some of these people have no business background, right? So that is a challenge for them, and they probably, I don't know what kind of business support they get to actually opening up a business, because it is very tough. It's extremely highly regulated business. Right? Yeah, especially for a lot of people running their first business. So I think in theory, it made a lot of sense to do that. But, there are some people that are, very successful at doing it, and some that, ended up taking big loans and aren't. So there's no perfect framework for any place, like there's pros and cons of everything. Like even in Canada, there's a lot of things that could have been done differently, but,
All right, let me follow up on that point. So if you could if I gave you a magic wand and you could wave and change any rule or federal regulation or even provincial. I know that many retailers I talked to in the cannabis space, were advocating for many years around window coverings, for example, that it was a kind of a gateway to, it was high risk around crime. Is there anything that, of all the things, let's put lowering taxes aside, but is there any one thing? You've already mentioned increasing the power of the intensity of edibles, but is that it? Is that the one thing that could break it open for you? Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, there's a lot of small things that, if you look at why people are buying products illegally, right? Like people buy products illegally because, they can buy it 24 hours a day.
Okay.
They have a dealer, they call them, the dealer comes. So I think allowing us to have our stores open at any time that we want would significantly help, because
could you staff it though, Chris? Could you staff it? Like that's tough, man.
Yeah, well, you see gas stations that are open 24 hours. Like it might be more difficult. You might have to pay a premium for it, but I don't think the 24 hours isn't going to make sense for every store. But some downtown Toronto stores would probably be open 24 hours. So I think
that's fair.
Changing that to allow us to be open at any point in time would be helpful. And then, the municipalities that have opted out of having cannabis, if there was a way to, everywhere allows cannabis, that would be a lot more helpful in terms of, increasing the market size for everyone. The window covering thing didn't really affect us that much. I know, so Alberta made that change. It was a big safety concern. A lot of stores were being, robbed at gunpoint, which was obviously very difficult for people working in the store. And, safety is such a, it's the most important thing for the whole business, is just making sure the staff are safe and comfortable and not, working in fear. But in Ontario, when they made that change saying that we could remove window coverings, I went and asked all my stores, hey, do you want us to take them down? And they all said no. They were fine with having it up. So we didn't make any changes to our business based on that. But the taxes, allowing more percentage, more milligrams to be in certain product categories is important. And then just more municipalities opting in to allow cannabis retail stores, and then for us to dictate our own hours would be beneficial. So when I say this, I'm speaking specifically more about Ontario than New Brunswick. So in New Brunswick, that would be useful as well. But just having more stores in New Brunswick obviously would be helpful for us as well. Just because once we open up these 2 stores, there's no more licenses that we can apply for. So we are hoping that they issue more licenses in New Brunswick after that.
All right. Last question for you. What's next for your business? Do you see going to other provinces? Do you see expanding? Are you tweaking the format? You've got a loyalty program. How are you thinking about continuing that momentum and growing sales? And you're already growing. You're going to 21 stores, so it's a bit of a funny question. But how do you think about that?
Yeah, the plan for us over the next year is to get the 2 new stores open in New Brunswick, and it's likely that Cannabis New Brunswick will issue more licenses. So we do plan on, once the licenses are up for grabs, to apply for more stores in Atlantic Canada and New Brunswick. And then, the plan for this business was always to build it and sell it. So, in the back of my head, I'm always thinking about, who do I sell it to? When's the right time? So that's something I'm thinking about right now is, we've grown to be pretty much, we're doing over 10 million in sales. We're profitable. We're probably one of the only profitable cannabis retailers out there. So just, continue to grow, eventually sell the business, and then just, introduce new things to, increase sales. I'm also thinking about potentially introducing my own private label products to get into the stores, but it would be more focused on New Brunswick than Ontario. So maybe I'll introduce more products, or introduce my own branded products in the store, and then just keep the business running, continue it being profitable.
Take care of your people. I love your focus on your people. That's fantastic.
That's the most important. That's the most important thing. The staff at the stores. Right now, it's when I log into our platform, our HR platform, and I see how many staff we have, I'm always shocked just with the number keeps going up. We have over 70 employees right now, and it would be shocking to see 70 people all at once. I do visit the stores and I see a couple people here and there, but to see them all at once would be
a big room. Listen, you've done so well. So Chris, congratulations on all your success and future success, the momentum you created in a very tough retail sector. So let's make sure and call that out, that it's been chaotic and exciting and all those things, but you've navigated those waters so well. So thanks again for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. Hey, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that? Are you a LinkedIn guy?
LinkedIn, email, my phone number is everywhere. I get 1,000 spam calls a day. I get so many spam calls. Just my phone number, my email, they're posted everywhere. But LinkedIn, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I respond back to every single person that reaches out, except for the spam people.
Except for buying except for the spam people. Hey, listen, thanks again for joining me. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for making time to talk with me on the pod.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.